queer theory cannot be thought apart from feminism in any way. Genealogically, they're so tied together and begin with very similar sets of questions about sex, sexuality, about hierarchies of gender and power. And then, my investment in feminist research is also about thinking the primacy of women and female subjects in political discussions about how we prioritize our foci or our work. In my first book, Relocations, one of the reasons that I wanted to rethink the paradigm around sort of cosmopolitanism is that its gendering is largely gay male. And what that does is kind of obliterate the experiences of queer women-identified people across different geographical sites. And so the feminist aspect of that research for me was really thinking about what are the reasons that metropolitanism, cosmopolitanism doesn't always fit within the paradigms of queer female sexuality. What are the economic reasons of inequality that have driven that? And I think that's where my commitments lie around feminist research. One of the most important political impacts, I think, of the work that I'm trying to do is to think about the long processes of gentrification, thinking about different complicities that different communities, classed or racialized communities, have in gentrification, and also trying to think about what it is to imagine relationality across these geographies, across these various points of identity in ways that are going to be ethical, that are not going to be instrumentalizing, and that aren't driven entirely by a kind of self-serving capitalist logic. I think it's important to engage the kind of prevailing cultures of any given historical moment. And that's what I think of as popular culture. Whether or not you're working in earlier periods, working, for example, in the Victorian period or in the 19th century, you're going to, there was a period of time where Dickens wasn't considered serious literature, but was part of a kind of popular discourse and in part of the shaping of a kind of mainstream culture. And I think that the more we understand those forces that are taken up by a broad community of people, the better we are able to also understand what interventions we can make in changing those prevailing messages, or in understanding how certain ideas filter through or are filtered by production processes that in ways that we could, again, maybe transform, create the possibilities or conditions of possibility for new stories, new narratives, other trajectories to be made or created by these objects. There are efforts on social media platforms, for example, communities of women of color, queer women of color, who create these social media like cohorts or groups that try to share and also think critically about their experience as queer women of color on Instagram, why their images have not been captured or disseminated in the past, thinking also about what networks of resource sharing can be made or can happen through these media forms and platforms, and that's within our sphere of popular culture. And also in television today, I think that's a particularly exciting space where you have people like Issa Rae or Kenya Barris or other writers from different backgrounds really thinking about what that medium is accomplishing, what it can do, what its limits are, and how to expand that to account for the stories of people who exist in undercommons, in underclasses, in races that don't often see themselves on screen except depicted in particularly stereotypical conditions. So I think that that's one of the places right now that we can look to where there is a considerable shift in thinking through how we make this material, who makes it, who's behind the scenes, at every level of production. And I think that that's an important site for us to explore.